You know the difference between a horror game and a horror movie? Horror movies rely on the empathy of the viewer, the ability to feel the fear of the protagonist and co-opt it as yours. In gaming, the fear is yours, and the actions are yours. This is probably why this new game is extremely scary and has already been banned in some countries in Asia. What is it about? What is the concept of? Follow us in this video to explore more about it. What is the game about? The name of the game is the Callisto Protocol, and it is a survival horror game that was only released about a week ago. Think of it as a sort of a zombie game, where you play as a person trying to escape hordes of creatures. Although it was originally supposed to be a part of PUBG Battlegrounds, it was later separated and given its own story. The game follows a plot in a futuristic world, the year 2320 to be precise, and the protagonist, Jacob Lee, who works first as a ferryman for the United Jupiter Company. When he and his co-pilot are being charged with the transport of a special cargo between Europa and Callisto, two of Jupiter's moons, they are attacked by terrorists after they reach the prison they are transporting to. A fight ensues, and when it's over, his co-pilot is dead, and he and the leader of the terrorists are arrested without charge by the warden of the prison. He would later awaken to find the prison overrun with inmates who have been infected by a very strange disease. The game would be a sort of prison break. Your opponents would be the biophages, the prison security system, and the prison's debilitating conditions itself. You might be thinking, oh great, another zombie and prison break movie, and to be honest, we won't fault you for that, but this game takes the concept of horror to another level. It's not exactly uncommon to see dismemberment and death in video games nowadays. Even in first-person shooter games, after the player has been killed, the camera pans, changes perspective from first person, and pans to the broken corpse of the player. We knew this was only going to get even more realistic, and the Callisto Protocol only serves to prove we were right. How is the game received? The creators of the game have already made it clear to anyone that they aren't going to tone down the content to pass regulations or any similar necessities. The game is very upfront about how gory death can be, and it seems to be the major thing that makes this game so memorable. On being asked about the hullabaloo caused by the choice to make the death scenes so graphic, the chief creative officer of the game defended the decision, claiming that it was necessary for players to have that perspective from the game. Looking at the game, one thing that really hits you is how next-gen it looks. Striking Distance Studios used the fast pace and versatile technology now available for game developers to create a game that is incredibly immersive, in more ways than one by the way, and would leave little to the imagination of the players. Like we said in the beginning, the game developers took the time to portray the players how their character dies after messing up against the enemies. What's the benefit of this, you may wonder? Well, imagine this. You are playing the highest difficulty and trying to hide from the biophages, but you get spotted. Combat is initiated and requires your best efforts or they kill you. You watch in horror as these scary creatures pin you to the ground, then, off you in really creative ways. Would you be inspired to really avoid them and fight like your actual life is on the line? Or are you going to just stand and let it happen again? This is the argument Chris Stone uses to defend his work. He believes that the people who play horror games actually like the rush and sense of danger coupled with the adrenaline they feel when they play it. We agree with him on that count. It's like skydiving, he says, or like driving slowly when passing an accident. There's a certain duality of morbidity and fascination that pulls people towards the scene. He isn't the only one that defends it, of course. Louise Blaine of BBC Radio also thinks the use of gore and violence must be allowed in video games. The Callisto Protocol wouldn't be the first to use those tools, and it wouldn't be the last. And with the relentless march of technology into progress, we may soon reach a time when these experiences would actually be felt by the audience, without actual physical harm, of course. There is debate on whether things like this are good for the players, but at this point, it's a tired old discussion that only rears its head when developers are adventurous with new titles. Blaine claims that we have to move on past it. According to her, the whole monster, blood, gruesome death thing is actually a good thing. She points out that those who are clutching their pearls aren't actually being forced to play it. The actress that plays Dani Nakamura, a major character in the story, is used to working on projects like this, so it's no wonder she would defend it. Per her analysis, gamers who play horror movies tend to find appeal in losing control in an environment where the consequences aren't major. At worst, you get scared of the dark for a few days. Regardless of the reason or analysis behind it, this is a game worth checking out. You may even find it more to your taste than most other horror games that have come out recently. Is horror a dying genre? What are the best horror games out there? Horror isn't a dying genre, but there is much work to be done. Apart from the big names, not many other horror gaming stories pull an audience like they are supposed to. More fans need to be created and mass appeal needs to be drawn. We are today recognizing the OGs that have held the genre down while working is being done to draw more fans. These are a few of the best horror games of all time. First up, Resident Evil. The list would be a travesty if Resident Evil wasn't mentioned as the climax. If we are talking about big names that form the pillar of the horror genre, Resident Evil would only lose out on the top spot if it is being rated by someone who has a beef with it. Since the first Resident Evil game was made in 1996, the game has expanded and explored new themes and plots, going through remakes and re-establishing in the hearts of fans of the franchise that it is here to stay. I can't exactly say which is my favorite, but the remakes did a good job of staying true to the source material while reintroducing the older to a relatively new audience. Many consider this franchise the pioneer of the subgenre of survival horror. I am inclined to agree, to be honest. Next up, Dead Space. You can draw many parallels between the Callisto Protocol and this classic that was first released under Visceral Games in 2008. It incorporates elements of science fiction with horror and culminates in another awesome space combat game. You play the game as Isaac Clarke, looking for your girlfriend on an abandoned spaceship while fighting off necromorphs, who are basically aliens out to kill you. There are 3 games in the franchise, but we recognize the first one as the major horror one because we feel the second and third games leaned more into action than horror. But then, there's good news for the fans about this game. A remake of the original is coming out next year. We would be playing too. How about you? Moving on, we have Bloodborne. I know, Bloodborne wouldn't generally be classified as a horror game in the sense that it leans more towards action than it does horror. Made by the devs that created Elden Ring, this game is considered by many to be one of the best horror games out there because many elements that typically constitute the genre were introduced into the visuals. The gameplay is insane, and the graphics and visuals are scary enough to make the characters and creatures look like they came out of a nightmare. Imagine not having enough insight and being killed by an amygdala you can't see. This itself is just one of the things that make your blood race while you play the game. Then we have Silent Hill. This franchise is one of the OGs in the gaming community, helping the industry to define the genre even as far back as the early 2000s. There is physical fear, measured by the race of your blood and the sweat in your palms, and there is psychological fear, which is the mental erosion of your fortitude to the extent that you feel it is better to run and hide than engage in combat with enemies on screen. Silent Hill is a splendid combination of both, and the fact that it follows a narrative plot is a bonus. Even though the game is old, it still lies in the hearts of many, and now that a remake of the second installment is coming to gaming platforms, you might want to consider getting in line for it again. Finally, Alien Isolation. Alien Isolation was adapted from the 1979 movie Alien and released in 2014. Again, this one is a combination of science fiction, space, and horror. The franchise is an extensive one, and while the period spacing between the first and the Isolation release was long, the Isolation installment represented a recall of the series back to its original roots of horror. In this terrifying game, there is only one xenomorph on the ship, and unfortunately for you, it cannot be killed. It would hunt you in actual Predator style, and you would have to evade it with your wits and a bit of luck to survive. This makes it one of the most terrifying games that have ever been released. We would advise that you check out the Callisto Protocol. We know we missed out on some of the more awesome horror games, so tell us your honorable mentions in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching our video today. If you liked our video, please click the like button, subscribe to our channel to see more videos, and share this channel with your friends and your family. Click the notification bell to be notified when we upload new content. Have a nice day.